In Syria, the Arab Spring goes terribly wrong, in part because of the response by Bashar al-Assad. So Tunisia is the first place to get the Arab Spring. The second place to get the Arab Spring was actually Algeria. President Bouteflika of Algeria didn't tolerate it. He crushed it. He was just brutal. If he even suspected you were thinking of Arab Springing him, you were in jail or dead. Like he did not waste any time. So Tunisia, the government collapses really fast, 30 days. Ben Ali's out. In Algeria, Bouteflika just crushes the Arab Spring and it's finished. Bashar al-Assad in Syria, when the Arab Spring breaks out in Syria, thinks, I'll do the same thing. And he actually starts by brutalizing children who are spraying graffiti on a wall. And the Syrian population can't believe that he's going to go after kids. And they begin to give up the idea of protesting to end this situation. And they go into a state of armed conflict. The weapons that they're getting are in part coming from Iraq, right? Because Iraq was destroyed. It's a failed state. There's no way you can look at Iraq and go, that was a success story. Iraq's a failed state, so it's an open wound, and it's easy to get weapons through it into Syria. But having said that, countries that had been really interested in seeing Bashar al-Assad go are also now pumping weapons into Syria deliberately. This allows for various militias to pop up all over Syria. Pretty soon, there ends up being 4 major actors in the Syrian civil war. There's the government, Bashar al-Assad's government. There's Jabhat al-Nusra, which is al-Qaeda in Syria. There's the Free Syrian Army, which was the guys that we were interested in helping and that the Europeans have been helping to a degree and that the Turks have been helping to a degree and the Saudis also. And then there was number 4, Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And Al-Qaeda in Iraq goes, chaos, civil war. This is exactly what we're good at. And they jump in, but they need a name change because they're not in Iraq anymore, right? This isn't Kansas. And so they switch their name to Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, which would be ISIL. Stop saying ISIS. ISIS was an Egyptian goddess. It's ISIL. If you know that the Arabic word for Levant is Sham, that's cool. It's Dawlat al-Islamiyya fi Iraq wal Sham, but then that's Daesh. So you still can't say ISIS. There's no way to say ISIS. It's just irritating. Once Daesh or ISIL goes into effect and joins this, they get really big. Oh, there's a 5th actor, sorry, the Kurds. And the Kurds are, of course, in the far north towards Kobane and then in the northwest corner. ISIL is, see where it says Raqqa, R-A-Q-Q-A? That becomes the center of their uprising. And pretty soon, they're capturing the Euphrates River in Syria. That becomes their place of operation. Now notice that I said there's Jabhat al-Nusra, which is the Al-Qaeda in Syria. The reason why there's 2 Al-Qaeda forces in Syria is by this point, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which is now in Syria, was kicked out of Al-Qaeda. And the reason they were kicked out was Al-Qaeda had decided they were just too brutal. They were too inhumane. They were too nasty. They were so far gone that Al-Qaeda was like, you can't be a member. You're making us look bad. ISIL is going to start getting some really crazy victories really early on. The Free Syrian Army is going to go nowhere really fast. They got Aleppo for a while, and they lose that pretty early on. They lose part of it. They still have a piece, but they've lost a huge chunk of it. The Syrian government systematically, slowly keeps losing more and more territory. They're down to about 25% of Syria. You can see on the map that the area that ISIL controls in Syria is really quite diverse. They're all over the place. They've got the Euphrates River completely cinched up. They're on the edge with Aleppo. They're on the edge with the Kurds in the north. They're really close to Damascus in the south. They've actually pushed right up against Lebanon. They've done very well for themselves. They are extremist in the extreme sense. So there's been an attempt by the US government to make the distinction between a fundamentalist, an Islamist, and a jihadist. And now ISIL is sort of being cast as the jihadists. That they're guys who want to do holy war, they're completely crazy, they're over the top, they're extremely violent, they're ready to cut your head off at the drop of a hat. On the other end, or next to that, are the Islamists. What the Islamists want to do is they want to create an Islamic state. They don't need to do holy war against the whole world. They're not necessarily eager to behead anybody. They might, but they're not going to go out of their way to do this. Their level of violence is shockingly less. So that's the difference between Al-Qaeda and ISIL. ISIL is the full throttle, testosterone, steroidal crazy that the United States used to portray Al-Qaeda as, but now realizes that Al-Qaeda is the toned down version.